After 3 months of working alone in another part of the country, my husband brought his partner in adultery back home to me and said something that changed everything.
I got this beauty here pregnant. I want a divorce. And since it's going to cost me a lot of money from now on to raise our child, I'll give you zero alimony. Is that all right with you?
Yep, that's fine. I'll gladly divorce you. My husband and his cheating lover were overjoyed to hear my response. Seeing that, I let the corners of my mouth twitch slightly, suppressing a devious smile as I thought to myself, if you think you're going to get away with what you want, you're sorely wrong, darling. This is the story of how my husband, a kind, confident, compassionate guy once upon a time, turned into someone I did not want to be with for the rest of my life, and how his heinous actions gave him extremely serious consequences. My name is Amanda, and I'm a 30-year-old housewife. I used to live together with my ex-husband, Shane, who ran his own business. He wasn't the founder of the business, however, his grandfather was, and this year marked the company's 123rd anniversary, and Shane was going to inherit the business from his father, Mr. Orville. We initially met through a mutual friend, Zia, who was actually worried about the fact that I was such a workaholic. Her words, by the way, and that I wasn't in a relationship, so she took the liberty of matchmaking me with Shane. When we first met, he came across as someone very confident in himself, perhaps because he already knew that he would be taking over the family business. I was attracted to him because of his confidence, because he seemed capable of doing the job, whether that job was running the business well or playing the role of a good man in a relationship. And when we started dating, he was very kind and fun to talk to, and he never boasted about his privileges. Around me, he was a very modest and humble person, and he was very interested in learning about my life. As I got to know more about him, I discovered that sometimes that confidence of his turned into a form of arrogance. But at least, he was never like that with me, mostly with the colleagues at his company events. His gentle and sensitive side outweighed his flaws, and I knew I wanted to be with him for the rest of my life. After 5 years of dating, Shane proposed to me, and we decided to get married. I was going to continue working after we got married, but Shane asked me to become his wife, by which he meant to be a stay-at-home wife.
As my wife, I would like you to quit your job and support me at home, if you don't mind, honey.
I had worked so hard at my job my whole career that I couldn't imagine quitting my job. However, I thought it would be possible to live and to find another form of happiness as I supported my husband from now on. So I put his feelings first and quit my job. I don't mean to brag or anything, but while I was working as a bookkeeper for a local company, I had the reputation of being an excellent employee. So when I told my boss that I was quitting, he desperately tried to stop me, and he was very adamant that I stay. But since my intentions were firm, he eventually understood and did no more to stop me from leaving. All right, Miss Amanda, I support you. We all do, but you must promise me that you'll come back to us one day. I'm joking, of course. It'll just be so hard to see you leave us. I invited quite a few people from the company to my wedding, and it turned out to be a very nice event. Truly the wedding of my dreams. I felt like a stranger as I told myself, today's the day I get married. And my husband was looking down at me with such a wonderful smile on his face as he gave his speech. I'm going to live happily with him from now on. I felt so happy thinking that. But as our life as a married couple began, I started to see Shane's true colors. At the beginning of our marriage, my husband was preparing to take over the business, and he was very busy preparing for this and that, and I was happy to be able to support my husband at his side with whatever I could do. So I cooked his favorite dishes for him when he came home tired, washed his bed sheets so he can go to bed smelling fresh, and vacuumed up any dust that can cause any discomfort for him. I don't think I need to tell you how very happy I was when he was happy.
Thank you for always doing your best to take care of the housework, darling. Thanks to you, I'm happy every day.
Well, hey, thank you for always working hard for us, Shane. And I'm just so happy to be able to support you and be by your side.
I'm so glad I married you.
And I felt so blessed because Shane never failed to express his gratitude. Even my in-laws were so ecstatic that I was his wife. I'm so happy someone like you came into my son's life. You are an amazing wife, dear.
You quit your job for Shane's sake, despite the fact you were good at the company you worked for, I hear. I can't thank you enough for taking measures. Some honestly unnecessary selfless, I admit, but still very helpful to support our boy. Bless you, my dear.
The president of the company I used to work for and my father-in-law were very well acquainted with each other, so he had heard some things about me before I even met him. Mr. Orville is such a kind soul, and his wife likewise, and when he told me he heard of my resignation as a business owner, he was sorry that I left the company. And then came the concerning bit about telling my in-laws about when we were thinking about having kids, and their answers actually surprised me. When you have kids, that is completely up to you two, my dear. So take your time and move at your own pace and don't stress about it, okay? In the end, it is your decision. Oh, but aren't you worried about having an heir for your business, Mr. Orville?
Call me Hector, dear. And you need not think about it. Besides, heirs are old-fashioned now. I intend to grant someone who wants to be the president, who is also worthy of the position, their wish of running the business in the future.
And that's what he said. I told this to my friend Zia, the same friend who initially introduced me to Shane. Wow, they are very flexible in-laws, aren't they? That's right, they are, but I think they're thinking about their heir, so I can't help but think I have to hurry up and get pregnant, you know? What are you talking about, sweetie? I'm sure they mean what they said, okay? You don't have to rush anything. I doubt that. Okay, why would you doubt their heartful words, sweetie? Listen to me when I tell you I freaking envy you, okay? I mean, Mr. Orville's the president of a company and all, so anyone could agree he very well may pester his daughter-in-law about conceiving a rightful heir to inherit the business and stuff, but he's so flexible and nice, and Miss Orville too? Wow, seriously, it's so amazing your in-laws have a very flexible, open mind about this entire situation, and they're willing to be patient to not give you any stress. You married their son, and in any case, I can guarantee you they're filled to the brim with happiness and gratitude, sweetie, okay? They really are wonderful people, Zia, and that's exactly why I don't want them to be so bummed. Why do you stay so rigid when your in-laws are so flexible, girl? If they say I don't have to worry about it, then don't worry about it. It's that simple. And if I were to marry, I'd want to be married to someone with folks as nice as your in-laws. I was so happy when Zia complimented me about my in-laws. And I was also very grateful to them for their flexibility and willingness to accept me. Such was the relationship with my in-laws. And needless to say, things were great. But my relationship with my husband started to change little by little. After a while, he sometimes came home late, perhaps because he was busy with work, but regardless of the time of the day, he would start drinking alcohol. And he would drink a lot of alcohol. Like when we were first married, if he came home late, he often didn't drink because he had to think about the next day's line of work. But more recently, he drank without a care in the world, like he was back in college or something. If that was all there was to it, everything would have been fine, but for the reality that he was one of those people that got frustrated and lashed out at others when he drinks, I was no exception either. If anything, I was the one who experienced the worst of his outbursts.
Drink! I'll have some more, so shake a leg and frickin' bring me some, woman. And bring snacks, too.
All right, Shane.
That's not how you address your husband. From now on, whenever you answer to me, you are to say, yes, sir. Is that frickin' clear?
Yes, sir.
You're a housewife. You're to do everything for your husband. That's me. Understand? You'll face the consequences if I don't feel satisfied.
What a whiny bitch he was. God damn. As the night wore on, Shane was getting more intoxicated. Maybe you should cut back a little, honey. You're drinking too much, and you have to go to work tomorrow, so maybe you should go to bed early. Shane's expression changed instantly when I pointed this out to him. He got up, slammed the table so hard that he could have scared a silverback gorilla, and started yelling at me at the top of his lungs.
And you are not working, you're just staying at home, doing stupid easy tasks without ever even breaking a sweat. I'm going into the world, breaking my back, trying to provide enough for both of us to have a good life. I'm freaking tired after a long-ass day of working. What the frick is wrong with having a few drinks, huh?
I was so surprised at his outburst that I backed away. That fury expressed in his voice sent shockwaves of fear across my entire body. And before I knew it, my hands were cupped around my nose and my mouth, scared out of my mind and on the verge of breaking down into tears. I tripped on the couch behind me, and as I backed away, I felt all the strength in my legs leave as I collapsed onto the floor. Seeing the look on my face, Shane panicked and began apologizing, desperately. He dropped to his knees and very slowly started approaching the couch.
My gosh, what did I just do? Amanda, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't know what came over me. I guess I was more tired than I thought. These days I just can't sleep unless I've had a drink or two, but I drank too much tonight and I made you scared. I'm so sorry.
He was kneeling in front of me at that point, his eyes staring deep into mine, his warm hands clutching mine. The twinkle in his eyes proved he genuinely felt terrible about what he did, and the fear that I had went away. I'm also sorry, honey. I know you're tired from work. I didn't think a drink was exactly what you needed. I should have paid attention to your feelings. He placed his forehead on my knees as he began to mutter the same 3 words.
I'm so sorry.
I'm sure Shane was tired because he had so much to take care of, and he was going to take over the family business and to become the president of a company and lead it towards the success that it was made for. I know it's not easy, and that was going to be very stressful on him. The stress he's feeling must have been unfathomable. I should have been more understanding, and I felt like I said too much when I suggested he stop drinking. But in my defense, he did have to work the next day, and I was worried that the amount of alcohol he was drinking would affect his focus. After that night, Shane became angry and extremely self-centered when he drank, and he started yelling at me whenever I mentioned anything to him.
You're a lowly housewife. Don't complain to me, the president of a frickin' business, making enough money to provide for 2 families. Your job is to take care of me, and that sure as hell excludes telling me what to do.
I'm sorry.
And also, if you ever came to work for my company, you wouldn't be appreciated. You wouldn't even get a bonus. You may have done reasonably well at your old job, but now you're no better than a damn housekeeper. You're so worthless it's making me sick to my stomach.
He went so far to just start degrading everything about me. I began to find it hard to support Shane, and it broke my heart because he changed from this kind man who used to be so sweet to me to this abusive bastard whenever he would take a drink. As the life continued, our feelings for each other continued to disappear. Perhaps because of this, Shane started coming home later even more frequently. No. And he even stayed the night somewhere else on multiple nights on end. He was supposedly staying at the office, which conveniently had a nice designated relaxation room for such situations. And we continued to have our differences, and he continued to come home late, if not at all, until he came home earlier than usual one day because he had said he wanted to talk to me about something.
Everything's sorted now, and I'm finally taking over the business, Amanda. I should officially be president of Orville next week.
Congratulations, honey.
I'm so sorry I've been so busy lately that we haven't had much time to spend together. I'm sure things will settle down quite a bit now that everything's sorted. Why don't we have a baby?
What? To be brutally honest, I was worried. Shane's personality changed whenever he would drink, and as you've heard me elaborately explain, we've had our differences, and all of these components combined made me unsure if having a child was the sanest thing to do right now. But just because we would try to conceive a baby doesn't mean we'll have one anytime soon. And I knew I wanted to have a child eventually, so I cast all my doubts out the window, and from that day onward, we tried to conceive to have a child. I guess this is what Miss Orville was talking about, the timing of conceiving a child. However, after a month of trying to get pregnant, my husband announced that he had to go to another part of the country to work alone in a branch for some time. When I asked him how long he would be gone, hoping it would only be a couple of weeks, I was met with the harsh truth. The duration of his stay at the other branch would be 3 months. I thought it was inevitable because of his work, so we temporarily stopped trying to have a baby. But 2 weeks after he went on a business trip, I went to the hospital because I wasn't feeling too well. And after some tests, the doctor gave me the unbelievable news that I was pregnant. I was overjoyed, and Shane had said he wanted an heir, so I was sure he would be very pleased too. And that was exactly why I wanted to tell him, and that's exactly why I wanted to tell him in person. However, I realized I had a teeny tiny problem with that. I hadn't heard which city he was going to work in, or which branch he would be working for. In other words, I had absolutely no idea where my husband was right now at this very moment. So I decided to contact his company and ask him where he was assigned to. And that's when things went downhill so unexpectedly and so damn quickly.
Oh, President Orville Jr.? It seems the president is taking a long vacation. 3 months, I believe. I'm under the impression he and his wife are on a vacation together.
What did you say? I was surprised, and the receptionist was surprised because I was surprised, and this wasn't good at all. I'm wondering, I'm President Orville Jr.'s wife, and they must be wondering why I, his wife, didn't know where he was. And I felt worried that my exclamation would provoke unnecessary gossip throughout the whole company, and if such a thing happened, everything Shane had ever worked for would have been all for naught. So I quickly said,
"Oh, wait a minute. I just remember something. He said he was going to his parents' house today. That's right. Oh, dear, I am such a klutz. I completely forgot. Sorry to bother you. You have a nice day now."
I was still nervous after I hung up the phone, so Shane wasn't working at another branch for 3 months. He was supposedly taking a long vacation. I didn't understand what that meant. I knew I wouldn't get anywhere thinking about it on my own, so I decided to call Zia and ask her to help me out with the situation. I told her that I was pregnant and that my husband was verbally violent with me when he drank, and that he lied about taking time off from work, saying that he was going on a 3-month reassignment to another branch in another part of the country.
That's moral harassment, isn't it?
Moral harassment? No, of course not. It's not. It's my inability to be useful and do everything right around the house that makes him angry. It's my fault. I'm a total failure, a screw-up of a wife, a worthless piece of shit.
You see, that's someone who's been harassed would say. You have been mentally abused.
What do you mean? There is a such thing as a bad marriage, you know. An ideal marriage is where a husband and a wife complement each other, and that they can always support each other when someone needs something from the other, and that they take care of each other and respect one another equally. So do you notice anything wrong with your relationship right now with Shane as I'm telling you this? I was silent, deep in thought, until a horrifying truth became very apparent to me. I wasn't really supporting Shane anymore as I thought I was. I was only behaving obediently and as angelic as possible in order not to anger him, and to be frightened by his fits of rage and verbal violence. I never realized this until Zia gave me insight, and I was immediately ashamed of how much of a servant I had become to him. You know, your life right now is not just your own, Amanda. You are now a mom growing a child in that belly of yours, and for the sake of both of you, you need to be more confident in yourself, find the love that you have and the strength that you need, and you need to take better care of yourself, okay? And I know you got this, and you got me too. Those words disillusioned me from the semi-fraudulent reality that now defined my life, and a new sense of determination ignited within me. I now had a child in my belly, and I was the only one who could protect it.
So I made up my mind to face Shane, and for my baby's sake, and for my own as well. After that, Zia advised me to go to a detective agency to investigate Shane. I hired a trusted agency with the task of determining if Shane was up to anything suspicious. As a result of the investigation, I found out that my husband was cheating on me. I was shocked, but I was able to keep my feelings in check thanks to the baby I was carrying. Stress, be it physical or emotional, spelt disaster for the healthy growth of my baby, and I had to make sure I was at peace. 3 months passed more quickly than I realized. The day when Shane said he was coming home approached rapidly, and then, finally, he walked in through the front door for the first time in a while, and he'd brought back a woman whom he was having an affair with. They'd been drinking without a doubt because the smell of whiskey and rum was so strong on his breath. 3 months pregnant, I became so sensitive to smells, and alcohol was something I had to avoid to keep the baby growing healthy and strong, without any harmful substances getting into it. The smell of whiskey was unbearable, and it was making me gag.
I'm home. And also, this is the beautiful lady, Kara Kim, and I got this maiden pregnant. I want a divorce.
What?
It's gonna cost a lot of V-Bucks. Oh, whoops, I meant regular bucks, our bucks from now on, so I'm gonna give you 0 alimony. Is that alright with you?
You've already had a nice freaking rich time as the big boss's wife, right? You've had enough time, my dear little Amanda, and I'm not going to let some blood-sucking leech cling to my fiancé's money. You couldn't keep this wild stallion's heart, dear, and this eager mare managed to tame him into a gentle, passionate beast once again. And now, new life's gonna bless this shithole of a world because of our lovey-doveys. When the concerningly intoxicated Kara said so, the two cheaters both laughed. Shane was even drunker than his pregnant maiden, and I didn't want to get in trouble for saying something here. Besides, I wouldn't want anything to happen to the baby in my own belly. I didn't resist. Fine, I'll divorce you, but I'm going to keep the house.
Wait, seriously? Go ahead. Keep this whorehouse. I actually just bought an exquisite condo today to live in from now on with this girl. Something you'd never be able to understand, Amanda.
So there's no problem. Great. I'll have to put it in my name, so you just take care of the paperwork, okay?
Yeah, gotcha. I'll mail you the divorce papers, so make sure you submit them at the city hall, yeah?
Deal. Yay, I'm glad your divorce was so easy. Your old wife is so sweet. With that, they left the house, hopped into Shane's car, and drove away. I hoped they would survive the night, even though they were drunk driving after all. So what the hell am I saying? I didn't give a good goddamn about those freaking maggots anyways. An hour later, I got a call from my father-in-law.
Hello, Amanda? So, you're not going to believe this. The strangest thing just happened with Shane. He just came home with another girl at his side. He told me that he was divorcing you and that he was marrying the woman whom he called Lady Kara, or some shit like that. Do you have any idea what the hell is going on here?
Poor Mr. Orville. How horrified and confused he must be feeling. I told him everything that had happened thus far. I told him that I was pregnant and that I tried to tell Shane, but he discovered he'd lied to me about going to work for another branch in another part of the country because he was in fact taking a trip in the Bermudas with this woman, Kara. I also told him what transpired that night before Shane made his way to his family home, and that I'd been having a very hard time because Shane had been so out of control when he drank alcohol, and he abused me verbally and psychologically. The last straw was that he had been drinking and driving, and when I told him all of this, Mr. Orville's voice was quivering with fury when he answered as calmly as he could.
I understand, dear. I'll make him take responsibility, and I'll come back later to apologize. I'm so sorry about everything.
That's all he said, and he hung up the phone. A few minutes later, I got another call, this time from Miss Orville. Amanda, dear, Shane is acting up. Please send help. I guess he was drinking alcohol right when his family got angry with him and didn't like it and went completely berserk. I called the police and then headed to my in-laws' house, which is about 15 minutes away by driving. I couldn't see how things would transpire later on that evening. I mean, that sarcastically, of course. I was only heading over there because I was concerned for the safety of Mr. and Mrs. Orville. When I arrived there, the police had already stormed the house. As I walked towards the front door, I saw multiple police officers apprehending Shane, who was struggling aggressively to free himself from their grasp. His thrashing sent an officer off balance and with his foot forcefully pushed him down the stairs that led up to the door. The officer landed at the bottom of the steps with a soul-wrenching crack. As he hit his head on the pavement, he wasn't knocked unconscious, but he lay there holding his head, moaning loudly in pain. A different police officer rushed to subdue my husband, but because he was already so intoxicated, his own body didn't seem to have any control over itself, and Shane suddenly collapsed to the ground himself. So the medics stepped in and rolled him onto a stretcher, and they hauled him away in an ambulance. The unfaithful Lady Kara tried to escape in the midst of all the commotion, but the police stopped her quickly and apprehended her without much difficulty. And the lead officer asked her to follow them to the station, and the last I ever saw of Lady Kara was of her being shoved into a vehicle in handcuffs. I spent the night with Mr. and Miss Orville that day, and we talked about the situation well into the night. The next day, Shane woke up in a hospital bed. He seemed surprised to see me there at his side reading a book.
Why the frick are you here?
Oh, good morning. I actually forgot to tell you something, and I figured the right time to tell you was actually right now when you woke up. I'm going to demand an alimony and child support after the divorce is finalized.
Eh? Child support? Are you frickin' crackers? We don't have a kid, in case you didn't frickin' know.
Yeah, I'm actually pregnant, Shane. And I was about to tell you, but you told me you want a divorce before you ever gave me a chance to tell you the good news.
You can't be serious. No, you're not serious.
And why would I want to lie to you now, of all times? My husband was visibly shocked, and the sight was frankly hilarious, actually. But he was more concerned about something other than the baby.
You said you didn't want alimony.
I told him with a laugh. Oh, I didn't say that, honey. I never said that. But you had so much to drink that you convinced yourself that I did it in your favor. Shane went on to glare at me with murderous intent. I glared back with a large, ominous smile on my face. Then Mr. Orville Sr. stormed into the room and forcefully joined the conversation.
What in the goddamn Vitamita Vegemin jelly bean shit mix have you done to Amanda? What the hell do you mean you're not paying any alimony? Why did you grow up to be such a bastard who doesn't understand simple human emotions?
Miss Orville trudged inside as he was being shouted at, and a handkerchief covering her eyes and her sniffles echoed throughout the room as the only sound amidst a deadly silence. Shane said nothing, as if he couldn't say anything back when his own parents said that. Perhaps seeing his own mother crying in shame towards what he had done and brought him back to his freaking senses. Well, I'll be just fine with alimony and child support, and I'm supposed to get the house too, remember?
What'll be left for me then?
Maybe that pregnant woman of yours. Oh, yes, Lady Kara, was it? Well, I feel bad for the baby, honestly. I really do. To be born to two stupid, drunk, infested parents like you? Ugh, that is such a bitch.
Don't you frick with me. Know your goddamn place, boy.
And I thought the house was in your name, but it's actually in your father's. And we've already negotiated to a great compromise, and he'll take care of everything. Now all that's left for you to do is to never have anything to do with me or my baby again. When I told him that, he just laid there stunned and silent, unable to say anything. Then a police officer walked in, followed by two more.
We're here about yesterday. We have an official warrant out for Mr. Shane Orville. You are under arrest for the assault of Officer Earl Wilcox, and we've kicked down a total of 6 steps totaling in 4 feet at approximately 1:14 a.m. on the morning of September 12th. Officer Wilcox was diagnosed with a mild concussion due to the fall and has been ordered to remain in hospital for 1 week. Upon your recovery, you'll be taken in for custody.
My in-laws agreed to pay for my husband's alimony and child support for the time being. Thereafter, Shane and I got divorced without anything problematic occurring. He was released almost immediately after he was arrested because he was charged with assault while under the influence of copious amounts of alcohol. He was released on parole and was charged with paying for Officer Wilcox's medical bills, which my in-laws graciously took care of. They even made a small donation to the police department who come to help the night before, as a token of their appreciation. Shane's punishment may have been pretty mild, but society had other ideas to pay him back. He was kicked out of his company, and as of now, he's looking for a new one. Needless to say, it's going to be tough for him to get another job since he made the headlines when he was arrested. His parents also cut off ties with him, so he has nowhere to go and no one to turn to. No more nepotism for Shane. And as for Kara Kim, I hired a detective agency to investigate her, more specifically her address and her workplace, so I made sure to demand alimony from her as well. Shane and Kara are now married apparently, but since they have no money, they're really having a hard time making ends meet. And I heard that Kara can't work because she is with child, so she's staying at home as Shane goes to work multiple part-time jobs. They just can't catch a break, and their married life is full of quarrels. They absolutely deserve each other. As for me, I was asked to work for Mr. Orville's company, but I didn't feel comfortable working for the company where my ex-husband used to work, so I decided to go back to the company where I used to work, keeping my promise to my old boss. He was overjoyed when he found me back in the building, but then showed sympathy when I told him everything that had happened up until then. The company has a daycare center too, so I can work without worrying too much about raising my child when they're born. And I still keep in touch with the Orvilles, and sometimes I invite them for a luncheon, and we still have a very friendly relationship. I'm sure that there will be many hard days ahead after the birth of my child, but as a single mother, I will raise my child responsibly and make sure they grow up to be responsible, independent, and compassionate.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my 2nd year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was. As the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. "Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize." Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry." Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.